What joke is clean when told to a child, but dirty when told to an adult? When I was younger and I would be about being bored, my grandpa would tell me when I was a kid we were so poor my mom cut the pockets out of my jeans so I'd have something to play with. I thought it was silly because how do you play with cut out pockets? I was 20 something before I finally understood the joke. That reminds me of my grandfather. My whole childhood when I would make fun of his belly he would tell me he was pregnant with an elephant and the reason that he knew was because the trunk hung out the bottom. As a kid I used to laugh and tell all my friends about the elephant in my grandpa's stomach. When I was about 15 it hit me. WTF grandpa. When I was about 6 years old my girlfriend gave me a Valentine's card that read milk is milk, coke is coke, what's a kiss without a poke? Her older sister apparently told her the poem. It wasn't until years later that I finally realized what it actually meant. Dude, you cold or got laid? I have a friend who overheard her parents' friend tell a dirty joke when she was little, maybe 8 or 9, and didn't get it. The joke was when is a troll not a troll, when it's between her legs and it's a goblin. My friend, in her little elementary school mind, thought the adults were laughing because it was some sort of absurdist anti-humor, so she had the great idea to start telling jokes with the same format. When is a giraffe not a giraffe? When it's in your basement and it's a hippo? When's a policeman not a policeman? When he's under the table and he's a fireman? She told everyone these jokes, including the original one, to friends and family alike. She said it was years, like she was in her 20s, before she finally realized what the original joke meant, and then decades of mortification all came at once. Brilliant. I actually laughed out loud at when it's in your basement and it's a hippo. It wasn't really a joke, but back when Beanie Babies were a thing my aunt got me a Beanie Baby seal that had no tag on it. She told me its name was Club. So I go into school one day with Club and my teacher asks me what his name is and me being like force a Club the seal, which I didn't get until way too recently. Reminds me of the joke a seal walks into a club and dies. About 70% of Who Framed Roger Rabbit. I'm surprised my parents let me watch that as a kid, cause there's a lot of things in that movie that flew over my head. Also Christopher Lloyd's eyes in the final scene will haunt me for the rest of my life. I worked as a camp counselor for 7-8-year-olds a few summers ago. One kid told me the whole "I was 6 afraid of 7" joke, and I gave them an encouraging laugh. Another camper was jealous of the other camper receiving my attention, so she came up with this desperate attempt on the spot. Why was yellow afraid of red? Because red, blue, green. Hot dang, that's gold. Why do the hens go to the boys' toilets? Because that's where all the dongs hang out. A friend of the family told me this when I was about 5 and I giggled my tiny ass off, all while my parents shot him death glares from across the table. Anything that involved adults talking about toilets was grade A humor in my book. Lord Farquaad. Little backwoods. In grade 6 I referenced a rimshot to a teacher, Bardum, TSS, who wasn't familiar with the term. She reported the unsavory language to my parents who had to vouch that that was an actual thing and I wasn't talking about someone touching someone else's butthole. The butthole thing is rar anyway, not a rimshot. I was about 8 years old when American Pie came out. Every time I began a sentence with "one time," one of my parents would say at band camp, then they'd giggle to themselves and I'd have no clue what was going on. In class one day, my teacher began a sentence with "one time," so I finished the sentence for him just like my parents taught me. He looked at me a little flabbergasted and said, "You've seen that movie?" I didn't want to look like an idiot, so I just nodded. Oh man, my 3rd grade teacher must have thought so highly of my parents. Went to a pantomime when I was about 7. It was about Peter Pan. While Captain Hook was on stage, he asked us if we would help get his boat back into the water when it ran ashore. All the kids and parents were blowing, and when he told us to stop he added, "That was the best BJ I've ever had." The parents started laughing and the children, not getting the joke at all but not wanting to look like idiots, laughed as well. I only realized what the joke was a few years ago. In other words, a grown man dressed in a pirate costume told a bunch of kids they give great head in front of their parents, and the parents thought it was a riot. Kinda doesn't fit the criteria, but whatever. This actually happened. High school, morning announcements just finished. Principal, And now for today's thought of the day. A man is not a man until he kisses the lips that do not speak. Intercom shuts off. 5 seconds pass. Intercom comes back on. I would like to report that we are no longer accepting anonymous submissions for thought of the day. This sounds like it could be straight out of a Simpsons episode. Why doesn't Barbie have a family? Because Ken comes in another box. My mom told my dad a joke like that when I was a kid. I heard it and repeated it at my summer camp when they had a joke telling contest. They told my mom and dad and they yelled at me. I didn't know what I did wrong until much later. LOL. Why is Santa's sack so big? He only comes once a year. That's why Santa doesn't have any kids. He only comes once a year and that's down a chimney. If black birds have black babies and white birds have white babies, what type of bird has no babies? A swallow. This is kind of relevant. In The Master of Disguise there's a running joke about the main villain having a loose butt from prison. It takes the form of flatulence, but it's blamed on prison. So you get the gist of it without it being too much for children. I'd like to tell you he fought a good fight. I'd like to tell you that, but prison is no fairy tale place. So many in The Simpsons. For example, Homer, come on Bart. Remember all the fun we used to have on the swings? Bart, I was faking it. Homer, don't say that. Bart, oh yeah, remember this? Oh yeah, that's great. Push harder, faster, faster. Homer, no runs away. I had kind of a reverse thing happen when I was around 12 or 13. I live in Canada. On our nickel, the head side is an image of Queen Elizabeth II, and the tail side is a beaver. My parents grew up in Mennonite colonies in Mexico, very religious upbringings and very separated from the world. I was born there too but was 2 years old when we moved to Canada, and went to public school all my life. My parents could speak English but still had quite a language barrier so didn't really understand double entendre or sarcasm too well. Our family wasn't really a joking family. We didn't sit around and tell funny stories to each other and enjoy each other's company. It was all business, all the time. One day my dad comes home from work and says to my mom and I, "Hey, I got a joke for you." He proceeded to pull out a nickel and held it up. Heads facing us. "How do you make the queen smile?" He flipped the coin over, turned her around and rubbed her beaver. My mom and dad laughed and laughed. Meanwhile I was doing the awkward moment seal. 8-year-old stepson says his dad told him a joke. Guy 1, "Hey, do you want some headphones?" Guy 2, "Sure, but how did you know my name was Phones?" He inexplicably thought it was funny but I was unwilling to explain why he couldn't tell anyone that joke ever. As a kid I repeated a line from a radio car commercial. Bill Clinton impersonator. "I hope there's enough headroom for Monica under the steering wheel." I did not get the joke. Parents were mortified. Why did the Boy Scout get kicked out of his troop? Because he ate a brownie. Depending on your level of engagement, this is either stupid, a funny joke about cannibalism, or very dirty. I think the punchline works better as because he got caught eating a brownie. Ed, Edd n Eddy was filled with numerous examples. When it was snowing in one of the episodes, Eddie had a snowblower, cleaning the sidewalks, and aimed it at the Eds and said, "Snow job get a double D, hahaha." Still one of the smoothest things I seen on that show. Well, that and the disco dancing. So sweet. Top comment about Ed, Edd n Eddy, I can dig it. Wasn't as subtle with it, though. I know a few parents who are fine with their kids watching most cartoons, but wouldn't let them watch not because it had adult humor, but because the adult humor was too blatant and direct. What does Popeye do when his favorite tool gets rusty? He sticks it in olive oil. How does Popeye keep his favorite tool from getting rusty? Slightly different phrasing makes all the difference in a joke. What does every Tickle Me Elmo get before leaving the factory? 2 testicles. I was around 9 and with the whole family at Thanksgiving when I asked, "What's the hardest part when eating a vegetable?" "The wheelchair." Mom told me I shouldn't have said it. I'm picturing a tomato sitting in a wheelchair. Oh well, everyone laughed. When I was a kid I used to like this joke. What's the difference between a male and a female hedgehog? The male hedgehog has 1 spike more. I thought it was a cool absurd joke or so. There is a difference, but it is practically useless. Like if you were told that the difference between 2 twin brothers is that one has 1 hair more. Gee, thanks, that's useful. Then I grew older and I understood that it was meant to be a crude dong joke. Was disappointed. I still think that my childish understanding of the joke is the better one. From first grade, how did the bee break his stinger? He fell off his honey. Can you feel it now, Mr. Krabs? I'm ugly and I'm proud. Is that what he's calling it? Not really dirty, but Q. Why can't you play Uno with aliens? A. Because they steal all the green cards. Aliens are green. Can confirm 5-year-old me would have just thought space aliens wanted all the cards that looked like them. In Shrek, when he sees Lord Farquaad's castle, you think he's compensating for something. Kids think it's because he's short, but Shrek doesn't know that yet. My middle school I attended, long time ago in a suburb far far away, is named Wood Middle School. The vice principal used to do morning announcements with the opening "Good morning Wood." Why does a squirrel swim on its back? To keep its nuts dry. The egg walks up to the boiling water and says, "It may take me a while to get hard. I just got laid last night." Not really a joke, but when my son was about 3 years old he was totally into Thomas the Train. He was just learning to say the letter R at the time, so when he said his favorite character Percy, it came out obscene. So I'd tell him to go tell my buddy Dan, "You're big Percy." We called it Thomas the Tank Engine. I've never heard it being called anything else by anyone else until you said train. There is a school down my block and I tend to hear the announcements while having morning coffee. One day they were collecting dimes for charity and the principal asked the teachers to bring their dime bags to the office at lunch. What's the difference between a chickpea and a garbanzo bean? I've never had a garbanzo bean on my face before. Bikini Bottom. I always just assumed it was near Bikini Atoll. Even as an adult I don't find it dirty. Weird, I find everything dirty. You have been visited by the safety doggo. Subscribe and you will be safe from all danger for the next 24 hours. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check out another video. Or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.